Hey everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap to the 3rd to the 9th of March 2025. So, this week, Nacon had a Nacon Direct showcase. They're gonna showing off some games that are coming soon. A lot of their trailers were CG, so not a ton of gameplay being shown off. Anyway, I'm gonna start with two Cthulhu-y type games. So this first one is fucking forget what it's called now. Cthulhu the Cosmic Abyss. This is from Big Bad Wolf Games. Previously, Big Bad Wolf Games would have made The Council and Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song. Both of those games we have played on the channel previously. If I remember to, there'll be a link to it over my head somewhere. Anyway, they had their problems, but I thought they were pretty good story games. Both The Council and Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song were pretty slow-paced, kind of detective-type games instead. So not like a huge amount of action or like that kind of thing. Whereas this game could still be going for the same deal, but just eldritch horrors, Lovecraftian things. Does remind me a little bit of Stasis, which we've also played on the channel, the two Stasis games that have kind of eldritch horror stuff, but in the future and also underwater, so maybe they might be going for a similar thing. Both of those games were pretty good too. Anyway, that's Cthulhu the Cosmic Abyss, but we don't have release dates or anything like that. I think it is coming to pretty much everything except the Switch. Might be coming to the Switch too. We've no idea, because we don't really know. We don't quite know the specs of whatever the follow-up to the Switch is actually going to end up being called. Anyway, but it does look like it's coming to pretty much everything else. 2026. That's all we know. Next year. Okay. The other Cthulhu game is The Mound, Omen of Cthulhu. So this started off looking like it might be a kind of interesting first-person shooter Lovecraft thing, but set kind of during the times of the Spanish conquistadors heading to South America. I think that's kind of the time period that we're looking at. Unfortunately, it's not that game. I was really hoping that's the game they were going for, like a pretty cool horror, survival horror, first-person shooter type thing. I'm going to skip ahead to the gameplay so you can see what kind of game they're actually going for. And they are unfortunately going for a co-op 4-player Left 4 Dead type thing instead. So that's kind of disappointing. I was really hoping for a not this anyway. But if that's your cup of tea, sure, knock yourselves out. 2025 for that one. Okay, then we have the Fading of Nicole Wilson. Fading of Nicole Wilson is a little bit Phasmophobia, but way more structured. Like, it does seem like it's going to be a fully scripted game instead. So it's got a little bit of the Blair Witch, a little bit of Phasmophobia. The idea is you are playing an assistant to somebody who is like a paranormal investigator type thing for a TV show. And they're laid up. They can't do any of the filming or anything like that. So you're kind of being thrust a little bit into the limelight to check out these areas and see what's up. And then while you're doing that, you discover, hey, this place might actually be haunted. This place might actually be cursed, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the deal with this game. It's got a little bit of There's a Fear, I suppose. It's got a little bit of What Remains of Edith Finch, Vanishing of Ethan Carter. It's got a little bit of those kind of games going on, but kind of leaning way more into the horror elements. Maybe not more than Layers of Fear. Layers of Fear was pretty leaning into the horror stuff. Anyway, so the fading of somebody. What was their name? Fading of Nicole Wilson. I think later this year was the plan for this. Nope. It's coming to Switch though, so that'll be impressive. Anyway, at least that one had a little bit of gameplay to it. Styx, Blades of Greed. Yeah, fucking randomly, Styx is getting a fucking sequel for some reason. Anyway, This is another full CG thing. If you're not familiar, Styx is a goblin like thief like game. So it's like a stealth game where you're playing this kind of goblin asshole, more or less. Again, this is a fully CG trailer. There's no gameplay elements. There's hints of what gameplay there might be. There's a lot of misdirection. There's laying traps for enemies and stuff like that. And whatever gem he just picked up there seems to be somewhat story related, or might be giving him some of these abilities. Not clear. But that's kind of the deal with the Styx games. I think it's okay. They're not amazing, but they're all right. They do the job. Anyway, later this year, at some point, for Styx, The Occultist. So we've only seen CG trailers of The Occultist up until now, and that's not really going to change here because these are more CG trailers. There's a little bit of gameplay in this trailer, I suppose. This is, I think, the first time we've heard Doug Cockle do the voice acting for it. So Doug Cockle, you might know better as Geralt of Rivia. He's doing the voice of the main character. So it does look like it's going to be like a first-person investigative detective thing. How much actual like combat or like video gamey mechanics there are to it, and how much of it is just scripted, is not particularly clear. As the trailer is just very, very small snippets of gameplay. We're not getting like 9 minutes of unbroken gameplay or anything like that, so we don't really know. I think we do know that The Occultist has been pushed to next year. So I think it was planning later, the end of this year, but has now been pushed out to next year instead. So when next year, not really sure. Daedalic Entertainment are attached, so don't exactly have high hopes for the game. Daedalic Entertainment's last foray would have been the Gollum game. Now, they are only doing the publishing on this side of things. They're not doing any development, but still, it's not high hopes for that one. Last one, though, that I am actually kind of looking forward to and pretty hyped about. RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business is going to be a standalone expansion for the original game. Say standalone expansion, so it's technically not a sequel, but it's also not necessarily, like, I don't think you need the original game to play it. It's its own campaign. It does kind of feel like it's going to be kind of like Dread, the Karl Urban Dread, where they're locked into an apartment building and they're just going up floor by floor and taking out criminals along the way. I think that's the deal with Unfinished Business. It does look like there's an opportunity here for you to play as human Alex Murphy before he becomes RoboCop. I only recently played through RoboCop Rogue City, and I thought it was really good. It's a pretty serviceable shooter. Like it's not going like amazing stuff exactly, but it's well realized RoboCop. You know, I think they did a good job of it. So yeah, looking forward to this. But there's no release date. But I believe it is this year at some point. So I don't think they have a release date out for it. Yeah, summer this year at some point. Okay, so that was Nacon. Updates outside of the Nacon Connect. So we got a couple of new games. So this next one is coming from .emu and the Guard Crush guys. So .emu is the publisher, Guard Crush are the developers, as well as some other people. They either helped with Streets of Rage 4, or they did some of the porting of Streets of Rage 4. I'm not sure. Anyway, Absalom is going for Gauntlet, more or less. It's gonna go for like modern Gauntlet. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here because a lot of this trailer is just this animation. I'm gonna skip ahead to gameplay. Probably skipped a little bit too far ahead. Anyway, it's very much going for the side-scrolling Gauntlet thing, or a little bit of Castle Crashers, I suppose. And then a little bit of like 80s Saturday morning cartoon. I think it's got a little bit of the vibe there. Anyway, Absalom, I don't think there was a release date attached to there. Yeah, I think it is planned for later this year, but no specific release date window or anything like that. And then the second game we're looking at is Elusive. Again, a lot of this trailer is it's kind of animation. The idea with Elusive is a little bit the borrowers. You're like a very small humanoid creature walking about in human world. You're collecting things and so on. The gameplay wise, though, it looks like it's like a puzzle platformer type thing. You know, like not exactly Crash Bandicoot, I suppose, because Crash Bandicoot is really like a pure platformer. But it's got a little bit of like adventure. It's got a little bit of platforming elements to it. You don't see a ton of like you're not seeing any combat, so I would assume there isn't any, which is why I would say it's probably more on the puzzle platformer element of things. It's just environmental hazards and what have you, and just traversal. But I like the look of it. I kind of like the vibe they're going for. There is a little bit of a cat and mouse element to it as well, because you're running away from cats and crows and stuff like that. Right now, it is currently running a Kickstarter campaign, so if you want to check that out as well. I haven't backed it yet, but I'm thinking that I probably will, because I do like the look of it. I like the main character's design, actually, because their hoodie has like 2 buttons either side of it that like fold down. It kind of makes it look like mouse ears. Like I like that. It's a good idea. I think it was a smart design idea, and it doesn't take much to get me interested in the game. Anyway, see, he's got like, but they could be mouse ears, and now it's his cat chasing after her. Anyway, I think it's a good idea. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of other games that have Kickstarters going on, the Sinking City 2 from Frogwares. Obviously, they made the original Sinking City, and they're also responsible for basically every Sherlock Holmes game, pretty much, going back a very far distance. The original Sinking City had some really good ideas, but I think it was marred by its combat system wasn't great, and it was pretty jank, to be fair. It does seem like Frogwares want to lean in way more into the survival horror elements, so it's definitely going to be much closer to something like the Silent Hill 2 remake, or the Resident Evils after Resident Evil 4, but way more horror based. Anyway, that's a pretty short trailer. There is a Kickstarter again for this going on as well. It is fully funded at time of broadcast, so at this point you'd just be kind of locking in a cheap copy of the game if you were interested in getting it. As I said, the original game was way more of an exploratory thing, way more of a detective game, like the Sherlock Holmes games. Like, that was really what they were going for. Just Sherlock Holmes, but make it kind of Lovecraftian. And then they kind of did that anyway with Sherlock Holmes The Awakened, which is very much Sherlock Holmes, but make it Lovecraft. So the Sinking City 2, I guess they're trying to push away from the investigative stuff, because the Sherlock Holmes games kind of just do that, and they didn't want to just make another IP that does effectively the same thing. So the Sinking City is going to be focused more a little bit on the survival horror and shooting mechanics instead. Small concern, because Frogwares haven't done this before. Like, their bread and butter has been the investigative stuff, and they have added some gunplay elements in some of the later Sherlock Holmes and in the original Sinking City, but they weren't great. I think when I played through Sherlock Holmes, did I play through Sherlock Holmes on the channel, or did I do that off stream? I don't fucking remember now. Anyway, I skipped all of the combat stuff, because they gave you, I mean, when the game gives you the option to skip the combat, you kind of feel like maybe it's not that great. Anyway, we'll see. I'm hopeful. The small bits we saw there seemed okay, serviceable. I can put up with a jank if the underlying core of the game is interesting, as you've seen. I've played a lot of jank on the channel. Anyway, moving on. Last thing, so Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. So moving on from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, that got the remake treatment. 3 and 4 now getting the remake treatment. There's been a little bit of controversy, maybe isn't necessarily a word, but certainly a question around preservation of the game. So it is missing a lot of elements from the original Tony Hawk's 3 and 4. The entire career mode has been jettisoned. Certain characters aren't returning. Bam Margera, I know for certain, isn't. I'm not sure a few of the licensed, like, kind of hidden characters are probably not going to make their way back either. Doom Guy is in it for some reason. I don't think he was in the original. Yeah, so there's some questions. It does feel like it's going to be more of an evolution on Tony Hawk's 1 and 2. So it is, here's a skate park or here's an arena, and then here's a bunch of challenges for you to complete, as opposed to like the career modes that were in 3 and 4. How much people care about that, I don't know, but it is kind of a question of you're not actually remaking the game now, because you're leaving like big parts of the game out. There is the question then about whether this is a case of preservation or are you just making your own thing. And in that case, should you really still be calling it Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4? Or should you have given it a different name? I don't know. These are arguments that can be made. Anyway, last thing for your updates. The free game on the Epic Game Store right now is Them's Fightin' Herds. This is a 2D fighting game for furries, I guess. These skullgirls, but everyone's like a forest animal of some kind. Anyway, it's decent. It's decent. Some monthly games. So Xbox Game Pass, since it was the start of the month, so it's going to be Wave 1 for Xbox Game Pass. Rather annoyingly, Chrome has disabled a lot of the extensions I use on the weekly news recap. Normally I can just hover over this and it would show me a bigger image. I can't do that now. It's really fucking annoying. So we're just going to go through it instead. So 33 Immortals is getting a game beta on Ultimate and PC. 33 Immortals is a sort of... It's kind of like a mini MMO raid game. So if you... Like if your MMO was just raids, I guess. That's kind of what 33 Immortals is. 33, if you jump in, you try to take down like big mega dungeons and stuff like that. Yeah. From what I've seen, it looks kind of interesting. On the other hand, getting 32 other friends to choose is probably unlikely, so you're almost certainly going to have to jump in with randos. I mean, with raids, typically you would jump in with I don't know, because it's not really a thing I've ever really done, like MMO raid type things. The only time I've ever done it was Final Fantasy XIV, and I don't think I ever got far enough in the game to participate in a raid. Maybe one? I think the Crystal Tower is technically a raid. That was fine. It was fine, but I felt like I had no idea what was going on. Like, I didn't know why I was in the Crystal Tower, what the story reasons were for it, and what have you. Maybe that's not important to MMO players, but it's kind of important to me. I need to know why we're doing things. Anyway, moving on from there, Mullet Mad Jack, also Ultimate and PC, is a kind of throwback to 80s anime. And it's a roguelike kind of thing. I think we played a little bit of it on the channel during a previous Steam Next Fest. It's really good. It's really kind of fast-paced first-person... It's hard to call it a first-person shooter necessarily, but I guess it is. One Lonely Outpost is kind of like Stardew Valley. Although I don't think it has any of the social elements to it. It's just the farming stuff. Turn a barren alien planet into a flourishing home in this cozy sci-fi farming sim. Terraform the land, grow organic or genetically modified crops, raise adorable robo livestock. Fuck do you raise robots? Anyway, harness renewable energy, deploy drones to fish and forage. That's just doing the job for you. Befriend and romance... Oh no, it does have social stuff. Befriend and romance settlers. Uncover the planet's secrets as your colony thrives. So it does kind of... Yeah, it's like a Stardew Valley thing, but space. What were the last three? Enter the Gungeon is pretty old. Would I call this old at this point? Was it a PS3 game? I feel like it was. Or at least in that era? Or is time just a construct and I've completely lost track of it? I don't know. Anyway, Enter the Gungeon's a top-down twin-stick shooter roguelike. Very good. It's very kind of cartoonish. And a lot of the enemies that you're fighting in are very cute, but they're also like gun puns and bullet puns and stuff like that. I think it's really well done. And it's definitely one of the better shooter roguelikes out there. Monster Train I am not familiar with. And Galacticare I think is like a Theme Hospital clone, but in space. What the fuck is Monster Train? Okay, returning to the Game Pass libraries. It's been there before. Monster Train brings a new strategic layer to roguelike deck building. Oh, good god. That's the three where... I mean, I like roguelikes, but once you start throwing in deck building, it's like... How do you do deck build? You can't do deck building if your game resets every time. Like, you're not really deck building at that point. That's in my opinion. Anyway, 3 vertical playing fields to defend. Hell is frozen over and only you can protect the final burning pyre from the forces of heaven and restore the inferno. Okay, that escalated quickly. So I think the train element here, I don't think it actually means like choo-choo train, maybe? Or maybe it does? I can't see the art. See, this is why I need the magnifying extension. Fuck you, Chrome. Why did you get rid of it? Alright, Galacticare. You were the director of Galacticare, an interstellar healthcare company, quasi-voluntary savior of the galaxy for cash. Build hospitals and recruit staff to satisfy the whims of various alien species, cure their Brazilian illnesses, save the galaxy in story mode, or head into sandbox, yada yada yada. Yeah, it's Team Hospital. But space. Anyway, moving on. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, if you have a buddy, you can play Split Fiction. So this is the latest game from the Hazelight team. Those are the guys behind It Takes Two and A Way Out and various other things. What was their first game? Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. From the looks of things, it's just more of that. And I say just, I mean, those are good games. Fun co-op, a bespoke co-op game. They don't come around very often for obvious reasons. There's 2 of you like have to buy the game and you need someone who's around for the whole time and so on and so forth. Nicely though, for Hazelight, they don't require both of you to own the game. So only one of you has to own the game. And not only that, you don't both have to be on the same platform, which is a really good addition this time around. It Takes Two did have it that only one of you had to own the game, but you did both have to be on the same platform. Whereas this time around, there's now cross-network play as well. So that's pretty cool. Story-wise, you are kind of taking 2 creatives, 2 writers, 2 authors. One of them kind of leans further into the sci-fi stuff, one of them leans further into fantasy stuff, and they're both working for this big corporation thing, I think, and the corporation is gonna steal their IPs or steal their life's work or something like that, I think is the deal, to make these kind of like digital playgrounds where it's just where most of the game takes place. I think that's the idea, and they're like trying to fight against it in a sort of Tron way of, you know, going into the game, going into the computer kind of thing. I think that's the gist of the story. Anyway, that's out now. Let's check it out yourselves. And we have Do No Harm. So Do No Harm was in the latest Steam Next Fest. I did play a little bit of it. I didn't play it on the channel. But I did play a little bit of it. So it's got a little bit of Papers, Please to it. So the idea with Do No Harm is you are a doctor recently arriving through this island that has been isolated for numerous reasons. The previous doctor has disappeared or died. I think it's disappeared. And basically they don't keep a doctor for very long. And as you play the game a little bit for a while, you figure out it's because they go insane. Anyway, so it has got a little bit of eldritchness to it, but the basic gist of the game is to diagnose the patients in front of you. You use the 4 humors. So it is going back to like very old medicine, where people have like black bile and stuff like that. You'll be told like different people have not resistances exactly, but that's kind of the way it works. But like they're allergic to certain things that you can't use them. You're having to keep yourself sane by like ingesting laudanum often and stuff like that. So there's a good kind of play against these kind of things on do you fully give into the Cthulhu stuff, or do you like try to do no harm and be like a good doctor and uphold your oath and stuff like that. It's good. I thought it was really interesting. Merchants of Rosewall. So Merchants of Rosewall is a merchant game, I suppose is the best way to put it. You run a store. It is kind of like a fantasy kind of store. And then you're either working with or employing other artisans to make items for you. And the idea is you get your money in from selling wares, you put that money into the business, into the artisans, so they can make better things. You start selling the better things to make more money and invest into it. You know the way business is meant to work, the way capitalism was supposed to work. And you know, whatever profits you make, you put them back into the business to make the business better. Remember when that was the thing and they didn't just keep all of the money? Anyway, that's the idea with Merchants of Rosewall. You're effectively running a business, employing other people, going to market, buying ingredients, that kind of thing. And it's all dressed up in a sort of fantasy, orcs, elves deal. Yeah, I'm not huge into the management stuff, so it hasn't really... It sort of piqued my interest somewhat because I do like the fantasy element to it. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really into the shop management stuff. Anyway, that's out now, as far as I'm aware. Knights in Tight Spaces. This trailer is mostly live action stuff, but the idea with Knights in Tight Spaces is, if you have heard of the game Fights in Tight Spaces, that was the original game. The idea what it was is a kind of a tactical game where you are in a grid kind of pattern and essentially trying to survive a brawl that's about to break out with your different characters. You have a deck of cards. You know, there is a deck building element to it, which is why I didn't play the original. But again, it's a fantasy thing, so I was like, I might be interested now. Anyway, I'm gonna skip ahead because there's a little bit of gameplay. Like, there's very small snippets of it in there, but it is like sort of like sketched, like environments and stuff like that. You do use a deck of cards to decide what attacks you do and that kind of thing. But yeah, Fights in Tight Spaces was pretty interesting, so kind of like Knights in Tight Spaces might be good as well. So Dragonkin the Banished, again, was in a Steam Next Fest thing. It is very much a Diablo clone. So like an action RPG, isometric action RPG, Path of Exile clone maybe is another way to look at it. This has now just hit early access, I think. So coming up after the Steam Next Fest, it went into early access. You can check that out now. If you're interested, as usual, I typically wait for games to come out of early access before I look at them anymore. Then the last game we're looking at is a HD remaster. So this is Suikoden 1 and 2. I've gotten HD remasters. It's a Konami JRPG from the PS1 era. The Suikoden games are kind of interesting in that they're like a JRPG, but also Pokemon, because you're collecting a lot of characters. Like, the Suikoden games tend to have like 100 character parties, like massive. Suikoden, it might have been Suikoden 3. One of them has like 1,000, which is just insane. I think that's Suikoden 3. I'm not sure. Anyway, Suikoden 1 and 2 are both very good JRPGs all by themselves. But it is something to keep in mind that the story is very intricate. There's a lot of characters that all have their own different kind of reasons for fighting and so on and so forth. You may not be able to recruit all of them. You need like a perfect run, I think, to manage to recruit the entire cast. But anyway, it's both of those games, and now Konami are talking about kind of reviving Suikoden as a series itself. So that's interesting. We'll see how that works out for them. Unfortunately, though, speaking of Konami, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So layoffs continue. As you know, it's getting to the end of the quarter, so we got to do some more layoffs to get that number up. Sony continuing layoffs. This is definitely still the fallout from them effectively cancelling all of those live service games that they were planning. So PlayStation's Visual Arts and PlayStation Malaysia studios have reportedly suffered many layoffs. So you may not be familiar with PlayStation Visual Arts. They are a studio that it's a support studio for the first point. They don't make games themselves, but they do typically help out with things like art assets, character models, CG cutscenes, that kind of thing. They're kind of like post-processing for cutscenes and stuff like that. They do a lot of that work, and they do a lot of that across the PlayStation studios. Like, they're not attached to just one studio. But yeah, they've been hit by some layoffs. I say hit by some layoffs. Sony have decided that they want number go up instead. Anyway, so this is coming from former PlayStation Visual Arts project manager. It was tough waking up to messages that many friends and former co-workers from Visual Arts are laid off this morning. The layoffs today hit hard. PSVA let go of developers with decades of subject matter expertise, talent that will be extraordinarily difficult to recoup. This industry can be unpredictable, but the skill, experience, and passion of the people I worked with at PSVA are undeniable. So it's another kind of pointing out that these people won't hang around. They need the work, they need the money, and if they have to jump industry, they will. Like, the work they're doing can kind of easily, well, I say move into the film industry. The film industry isn't exactly doing great right now either. But they could jump into like consumer software and then or financial software and that kind of thing as well. You know, once they leave the industry, it might be difficult to get them back because of how disrespected they've been. Anyway, allegedly the cuts are widespread, also affecting the Malaysia studio, which is effectively a satellite version of the visual arts stuff. So Visual Arts is in San Diego. It's a studio that supports Sony's other first-party studios with art, animation, and technical assistance, and also collaborates with third parties on games, movies, and TV shows. So they also help out in like The Last of Us HBO show and that kind of thing. Anyway, was founded in 2020 as a support. Sorry, the Malaysian one was founded in 2020 as a support studio. So that was like COVID. Remember COVID money when money was free, effectively, and all of the tech companies decided to expand and then didn't think that they'd have to pay back those loans. Imagine having to pay back a loan. What a concept. Anyway, we're not done with layoffs. Until Dawn Remake Studio effectively closed following layoffs, says new report. So this is Ballistic Moon, who are the UK developer who were working on the Until Dawn remake. It was not Supermassive, who were the original developers. They had already suffered, being inflicted with layoffs the end of last year. Actually, shortly before the game came out, they were hit by a bunch of layoffs. An undisclosed number of layoffs were publicly announced last September, shortly before the Until Dawn remake's launch in October. So before the game even came out. So what kind of post-launch support the game got? I don't know. Probably not great. Anyway, they were reduced to about 40 employees. 40 employees were let go. They were reduced to about 20 employees, developers, kept on for post-launch support until they themselves were also let go at the end of December. Christmas. Great. Cheers. That's left a handful of employees at most alongside the studio's founders, but there are no employees in public relations, marketing, or development left. So effectively, the studio's a skeleton at this point. Ballistic Moon were reportedly unsuccessful in their attempts to secure funding or publishers for a new project despite pitches. Just unfortunately, a familiar story with a lot of the smaller studios is that the money's just not flowing. They're deciding to keep all the money themselves. I don't know what they're planning to do with it. Buy another yacht, I guess. Anyway, talks about even more like Until Dawn follow-ups. There were some hints that maybe an Until Dawn sequel was coming, but Sony appears to have not gone any further with it. Rather frustratingly here, though, we have... so this is from Inside Gaming's reporting that an anonymous source, one of the sources claims that the layoffs followed overtime and weeks of unpaid development work. Nice reward for our hard work, they said. Yeah, what the fuck? Like, pay your people. This is a question of who is responsible for paying them. Like, obviously the studio founders, owners of the studio are responsible for paying them. But was it a case that Sony didn't pay and therefore they couldn't pay their employees? Did they keep the money themselves? There's some shenanigans there. And it could be the case that the developers who've been left go don't have the money and don't have the time and space to litigate the problem. But there's a lot of wage theft. Like, that's textbook wage theft right there. If you've ever heard the term wage theft, that's what it is. It's just, we know we can get away with this because you don't have the money to take us to court about it, kind of thing. But that is obviously straight up illegal. They did work that they weren't paid for. But who knows that they'll actually see anything from it. Anyway, continuing with the AI slop shit. So Activision were already kind of getting raked over the coals with their AI shit for Call of Duty previously, as they were somewhat forced to admit on Steam that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 did use AI for a lot of its for some of its assets. I was going to say a lot. We don't actually know how many is the issue. It just says they used it. But no, now they're using it for games that don't even exist and probably will never exist. Anyway, there is advertising going around, mostly on like mobile internet, for fake Guitar Hero games and fake Crash Bandicoot games and fake Call of Duty games that are using these AI imagery to gauge user interest, player interest, what have you. So they're advertising a new entry in the Guitar Hero series is actually market research for a game that doesn't exist and is not meant to. This fake advert, which has been dubbed AI slop for its use of poorly generated imagery. Again, if I had the extension, you'd be able to tell, but like this squirrel is missing half its face and its feet, and I don't know what's going on. It has an extra limb here or something. Crash seems okay, I guess, but the more you look into this image, the worse it gets. And it's bigger, like there's a full version of it there that's even worse. Anyway, adverts also include new smartphone games and other Activision franchises like Crash and Call of Duty. This isn't a real game, but could be someday, which is a message that greets you if you actually tap on the ad. You're taken to like a mocked up thing that kind of looks like the Play Store, looks like the App Store, and has the game art and stuff, and it's like, hey, would you be interested in a Call of Duty mobile game or something? Would you be interested in a Crash Bandicoot? I feel like Crash Bandicoot Brawl is just Crash Rumble again, and you shut that down, guys, so like, I don't know what you're aiming for here. But anyway, the point is, these aren't real games, they're fake ads, which one feels like illegal in the first place, right? Like this textbook false advertising, no? Here's a product that doesn't exist. Maybe they get around it by you not having to spend money for it, I guess. Something, but it still seems wrong. Anyway, AI-generated advertisements are being used to gauge player interest in things like Call of Duty Sniper, Call of Duty Zombie Defender, and shit like that. But yeah, when you click on it, it is like, hey, these could be someday. Could you fill out this survey and let us know what you think about it? And I can't help but wonder, like, the responses they'd get from that survey to just be, what the fuck is this? Or, hey, I thought this was a real game and now you're telling me it's not a real game and it's actually AI generated marketing shit. Fuck you. Like, I can't imagine they're getting, like, good responses to these surveys. You know, people who take the time to fill out surveys for these kind of things are typically people with an axe to grind. Typically. Not always. I mean, I do sometimes fill out surveys in good faith, but a lot of the time it's because I'm fucking pissed off at something. Anyway, Activision, despite having Microsoft daddy money, is still deciding to do AI shit. Good stuff. Moving on. Acclaim, for some reason, are rising from the grave, with help from a founder of Turnip Boy commits tax evasion and a bunch of other stuff. So the classic 90s publisher, Acclaim, who's kind of best known for... It's probably best known for the original Mortal Kombat, maybe? It also helped out with Turok, NBA Jam. I think it had something to do with Kuji, maybe? What I remember it mostly for is like the WWF games, when it was still called the WWF. And a little bit of Turok, I suppose. Anyway, it's being resurrected as a fresh venture, which will aim to support indie developers and reignite classic franchises. I don't know how many... I don't know what IP Acclaim still owns. I believe it sold off a lot of it. We don't really know what Acclaim still actually can claim to own. Anyway... We don't know if it'll be doing stuff like offering people cash and an Xbox to change their name to Mr. Turok this time. Yes, the 90s were weird. As I've mentioned before, 90s video game advertising was really fucking weird. There was a marketing campaign that you would get like, I think a couple of grand pound if you legally changed your name to Turok or something like that. And there was another one that... There was another one for Shadow Man, and it had something to do with you putting your name on a gravestone or something like that, or saying that you would, or agreeing like a contract that when you died, your gravestone would read Shadow Man or something like that. I don't remember the exact story, but it was dumb. Anyway, CEO Alex Yosef, who's previously founded Gravity Games, sorry, not Gravity Games, Graffiti Games, who are responsible for things like the Turnip Boy games. So Turnip Boy commits tax evasion, Turnip Boy robs a bank. There's a couple of other indie games that don't have anything to do with Turnip Boy in it, but anyway. Reasons for resurrecting Acclaim is to provide much-needed resources such as funding, marketing, and PR support, giving independent studios the opportunity to bring their creative visions to a broader audience. Also to resurrect and revitalize the beloved portfolio of classic IP enjoyed for years by millions of players. Again, I don't know how much of that Acclaim still own, how much they'd have to buy back. There are a good couple of racing games attached to Acclaim as well. Blur, the first two Burnout games, which then eventually went to Criterion and EA. And there's a bunch of WWF, ECW games. Kind of interestingly, the wrestler Jeff Jarrett is on the advisory board for Acclaim, which is weird. Why? Apparently he has some other interests in the video game industry that I'm not aware of. I think he seems to be on boards for some other things as well. It's just kind of just okay. I mean, I suppose. Why not? Still a bit strange. Anyway, we'll see what comes of this. It'll be a while, I'd imagine, before we see anything. Anyway. Speaking of it being a while before we see anything, Keiji Inafune quit Level 5 last year, leaving the Fantasy Life team to reassess and restructure the project. So the game, Fantasy Life I, something Time Machine. What's the fuck is the game's title? Fantasy Life I, the girl who steals time. Right, that's what it was. Was originally supposed to come out in 2023 at some point, and then had a pretty significant delay. And at the time, it was down to just we've decided to reassess the project and we're taking it in a different direction and something. Now, though, it seems like the reason for the reassessment and so on was because Keiji Inafune left the company. So Keiji Inafune left Level 5 in the middle of last year, in the middle of development for the next Fantasy Life game. So mid-2024, Keiji Inafune leaves. At the time, producer Keiji Inafune left the company. We had to reassess and restructure the project. There was a bunch of feedback from some like beta builds. They got some internal testers, some external testers to come in. If I play the game, they're like, this isn't exactly going the way we wanted to. Potentially that's why Inafune left, because they were deciding to like restructure the whole thing. Not entirely sure. As far as we're aware, he has now joined a different company. I think that was in the update. Inafune is now an executive officer at Rocket Studios. I'm not familiar with Rocket Studios, but anyway, he's left that. Anyway, in response, we decided to take on the role of producer, shifting the core development team from Osaka to our headquarters. So they kind of brought in a lot of the developers who were working at Level 5 Concept and brought them over to Level 5's headquarters instead. At this point onward, we undertook a complete overhaul of the game. So it was set to release in 2023. Sure if that's true. I kind of feel like it was always going to be 2024, but just early 2024. Anyway, it got quite a few delays, and it seems like this might have been the reason. If you aren't familiar, Level 5 Concept, I think that's Mighty Number 9? I think that's the studio that Level 5 bought them up and then called them Level 5 Concept. I think that's them. Anyway, they're going to be absorbed entirely by the parent company. After that, shenanigans. So that's kind of weird. Other weird things happening. French Apex Legends voice cast refuses contracts over unacceptable AI. So kind of should have put this with the other AI story. Anyway, AI slop shit getting in the way of video games again. So the voice talent team responsible for Apex Legends French localization. Of course it's the French who are objecting, and like everybody should be objecting. But really, I guess not that it's easier for French to do it, but they are better at it, I think, protesting stuff. Anyway, they refused to sign contracts that would authorize their voices to be used to train AI. Pascal Chemin, almost certainly said that name wrong, has voiced Wraith ever since the Battle Royale released. Confirmed that she and 31 other voice actors have refused to sign paperwork ahead of a recording session. So this is joint action, group action. It's the best way to go about it. If you If one person decides not to, or two or three people decide not to, they can still push ahead and replace you. They're gonna have some struggle to replace the entire cast. You know, that's why try to get everybody on board when you do these kind of things. I needed to accept these terms before being able to go to work. This is translated, so it's gonna be a little bit strange. Anyway, I thought so when I read through the contract even, and a legal expert specialized in audiovisual confirmed it. These terms were not acceptable. I was now forced to give up the role I had been working on for almost 6 years. In no way could I force the rest of the casting members to do the same. But one thing was for certain, if we all refused, it could maybe have an impact. Otherwise, it would have been in vain. So again, this is weirdly translated. I'm sure the original French probably made more sense. Anyway, this is just them talking about how they couldn't agree to give up their voice to be trained for AI. Didn't necessarily want to make a big deal out of it, but if they could get everybody on board, they could maybe get this contract, refused, essentially. So collective letter of refusal has been sent to EA. If we aren't united now so that a clause that protects our voices can be officially added in our contracts, and not just for us here, but for every video game dubbing studio, we'll never get one, and we'll be heading for disaster. So you're going to have to stamp this out immediately. Don't give them an inch. Don't give them anything. Anyway, speaking about how, having to effectively not working, so you're not going to be paid while this is ongoing issue. So the salary would be welcome, but we aren't simply asked to work. We are asked to give up our expertise to train the generative AI that will replace us tomorrow. We are asked to agree to what we specifically fight against. We are asked to shoot ourselves in the foot. We are asked to support AI. So basically, it's just taking a stand that, no, fuck you. And good for them. I support this. More voice actors should do it. And there is an ongoing strike with SAG-AFTRA, but that is, I'm pretty sure SAG-AFTRA is US only. So the larger voice acting community. I mean, a lot of the voice acting work would be based off of, the English version, for Western developers at least, and then the Japanese version for Japanese developed games and so on and so forth. So there aren't a ton of games developed specifically in France and then with French as the main voice, the main language. It's still usually English. But we'll see how this works out for them. Hopefully they'll get something out of it, and that can be spread out to the rest of the voice acting for video games. Anyway, moving on. Visions of Mana co-director Kenji Ozawa opens new studio after leaving NetEase. So this is kind of following on from NetEase when we were talking about, it was 2 weeks ago, how they seem to be pulling back from a lot of their studios that they helped build in the first place. So Kenji Ozawa was formerly head of, what was it called? Ozawa? No, Uka Studio, that was it. Was owned by NetEase. They were brought in to do Visions of Mana, which was a new... Was it a remake of Mana, or was it just a brand new Mana game? I think it was a brand new Mana game. Anyway, it's pretty decent. Square Enix footed the bill for publishing. But anyway, the studio itself was closed down shortly after it in August 2024. Kenji Ozawa left the studio before that happened. So Ozawa was unveiled months after departing NetEase on Uka Studio. I'm pretty sure he left before it was shut down entirely, but NetEase basically used him leaving as an excuse to shut down the studio in the same way that Microsoft used Shinji Mikami leaving Tango Gameworks to shut down Tango Gameworks. Like, the same excuse. Anyway, so he's now founding Sasankwa, which is entirely founded by himself. Where is it? Zoe explained that Sasankwa will initially focus on smaller scale projects developed in Unreal Engine because it's going to be cheaper. They don't have to build their own engine. They can make a smaller game, less overhead and so on and so forth. But will eventually, the plan is to Sasankwa will work to protect creators, and said he is prepared to accept responsibility if projects fail due to poor management. He said he was motivated to establish the studio after witnessing mismanagement firsthand and feels it's wrong that developers so often pay the price for decisions made by corporate leaders. It's saying literally the things I say every week. Like, yes, absolutely. So we're seeing a lot of this now. Mostly we're seeing it from publishers setting themselves up to like work with developers, specifically indie developers for the most part. But it's absolutely a reaction to all of these layoffs, to how mismanagement has led to them, and the management itself has not suffered the consequences. Anyway, as I was saying, smaller scale projects, but they will eventually look to be creating like larger PC and console titles. So that's good news. And hopefully it works out for them, as we have seen other studios with the same idea where it hasn't, because unfortunately you still need investment to make like some of the bigger games. But if they stay focusing on just smaller titles, maybe they will. On the other hand, smaller titles don't make money. Anyway, last thing we'll look at for industry bullshit. Sumo Group sells publishing business secret mode for undisclosed sum. So this is secret mode, were a indie publishing label launched in and around 2020, and they handled a lot of kind of interesting indie games. And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, Sumo Group are not going through a great time right now, and have already, I think, sold off or laid off or closed a number of different offices and laid off a few people. This is sort of good news, sort of bad news kind of thing. So Secret Mode are effectively buying themselves out with the help of a venture capital firm. And that's the bad news part of it, is that it's still like a financial firm footing the bill, and they're gonna be pushing for the shitty things that financial firms push for. Anyway, Sumo Group has sold its publishing business, Secret Mode, for an unknown sum to Emona Capital and Secret Mode's current leadership. So part of the current leadership effectively approached Emona Capital to say, can you give us the money to buy ourselves away from Sumo Group, and then we'll go into some agreement with you to, make games and so on. Emona Capital is a financial investor with deep expertise in the gaming industry. Deep expertise. There's already a portfolio. I thought their name was familiar. They are working with Relic Entertainment. Relic are the Space Marine guys. No, wait, that's Saber Interactive. Who are Relic Entertainment? I think Relic might be the other Warhammer games. I'm not sure now. Anyway, they do have some priors, so they're not just jumping into the video game industry. They do have two other development studios under Emona Capital's umbrella. Anyway, Secret Mode will reportedly continue to operate as an independent publisher. We'll see how long that lasts. Focus on supporting indie PC and console games. Secret Mode's current leadership will stay in place, has the full backing of Emona, and will remain at the helm, leading the company as it enters its next phase. So this is kind of a copy of what they're doing with Relic Entertainment. It's the same idea. Relic approached them to buy them away from Sega. I may be mixing this up with fucking Saber Interactive and Relic Entertainment, because I feel like I've conflated the two of them as the same company, so I may be getting this wrong. But I believe the idea was Relic approached a venture capital firm to say, can you give us the money, buy ourselves away from Sega, we'll become an independent thing. You effectively get most, if not all, of the profit from any games we make after that. Anyway, so it is a kind of good news, bad news thing. It does mean Secret Mode gets to stay around, gets to continue working with their indie partners and so on, but they are effectively owned by a horrible venture capital firm now, so who knows if it's a better deal. Anyway, that's the news for the 3rd to the 9th of March 2025. So we saw some interesting things coming out of Nacon, but a lot of their trailers were CG. Not a whole lot of gameplay coming out of it. The RoboCop DLC, if it is DLC or a standalone thing, whatever, looks interesting. I did really like Rogue City, so hopefully Unfinished Business will be just more of the same. Outside of that, Absalom from .emu looks pretty cool. It's very impressed with their work on Streets of Rage 4, so more of that, that's not going to be a bad thing. Sinking City 2 and Elusive getting some of the Kickstarter projects, so check those out if you're interested. Remember, Kickstarter does have a time limit, so it's like 30 days. They think they've just launched, so you do have most of that time to check it out. I will more than likely back both of them, personally. The Xbox Game Pass, Mullet Magic is a very good roguelike. Enter the Gungeon is a award-winning roguelike game, both very good. 33 Immortals early beta stuff. Again, it's a beta. It's gonna be glitchy or whatever. New releases, we're looking at one Split Fiction. Just gotta find a friend now. You can play it too. Some of the other games there, like Nights in Tight Spaces or Merchants of Rosewall and stuff like that, they're not typically my cup of tea, but there are certain elements to it that I do find interesting, so I might check them out. Although it might be a case that I'll wait for them to hit a subscription service or a sale or something, because they're not, I'm not super into them. Do No Harm I might jump into, because I did really like the demo. Anyway, industry bullshit thing, layoffs continue, unfortunately. They've got a taste for it now. They've got a taste for number go up, and their excuses are still working. Oh, it's Ukraine. Oh, it's inflation. Oh, it's whatever. It's just I want more money. That's it. That's all it ever is. It's just greed. They could take a pay cut and solve most of these problems, but they refuse to. Anyway, Activision's AI slop shit, EA's AI slop shit with Apex Legends. Just kind of waiting for that bubble to burst, really, at this point, because it's just causing so many problems. And it's a technology that is just not going to do what they think it's going to do. Absolutely, they've bought magic beans at this point, and they think the generative AI is somehow going to replace the creatives. They're going to try to make it do that. And we're going to have the issue where it's not going to do that. It's not going to work the way management thinks it's going to work. They're going to have to try to get all of these people back, and a lot of them will have left the industry because it's too volatile and they have a mortgage to pay. And now there's some real shit coming, basically, when the AI tech bubble finally bursts. Anyway, a couple of new studios opening. Sazanqua from the Visions of Mana guy seems interesting, but again, we have seen studios built by developers that still have to look for investment and don't get the investment, so I'm hopeful, but I'm not sure how well it'll work out for them. Anyway, that's what's happening in the news. See what's happening on the channel. So over the Steam Next Fest situation, I did play a couple of games. I didn't end up actually streaming any of them, but I did do some pre-recorded videos that have gone up over the last week. So Twisted Tower is a kind of... It's got a bit of a Bioshock vibe to it. The idea is to climb this tower and there's a fabulous prize waiting for you at the top. It does have a kind of Depression-era trappings to it. It is very much a first-person shooter, as opposed to Bioshock's kind of sort of a first-person shooter and then sort of other things. This is very much a shooter game. But I did like the idea of it and the gist of the game. There's no release date for it; it's still TBA. But I thought it was good. And there's a video if you want to check it out yourself. Is the Sea Taken? Similarly, there's a video if you want to check it out. Is the Sea Taken is kind of the like wedding table planning as a puzzle kind of thing. It's like such and such wants to sit with this person, and then they don't want to sit with this other person. They want somebody they can talk to, and so on like that. So it's like every character has their own requirements for where they want to sit. It's like, I want a window seat. I want an aisle seat. I don't want to sit near anybody who stinks. The guy, he's very smelly or stuff like that. The stuff in the cinema, it's like, I can't see that well, so I need to sit closer to the screen. And there's people's like, I'm not going to buy popcorn, but I want to steal popcorn. It's like, and you can't just not seat them. Be like, fuck you. No, you still have to seat them, and you got to seat them near somebody who has popcorn and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a like a logic puzzle of where do you position everybody to get the perfect outcome. Again, pretty good. All of these games are pretty good, to be honest. Roots Devour is it's kind of like a survival, and a little bit of, it's not really a deck builder. You do use card packs, but there's no real building of your deck going on exactly. The idea with Roots Devour is you're this horrible, evil tree, and you're spreading your branches and tentacles around this like spooky forest, and you need to keep in mind like your different resources. You have resources of water, you're a tree, and so on, to live, and then blood because you're evil. So you're like killing forest creatures and, you know, people who are stuck in the woods and like cultists and stuff like that. You're draining them of their blood, and you're using the blood to wend your tentacles about the forest and stuff like that. And you're coming across different evil cult things, altars and sacrifices and that kind of thing. I liked it. I like the way that you're like spreading this tentacle around the thing. If you open out like a big map, you can see the spread effectively. Like I really do like that element to it. I think this was the first demo. Sorry, of the demo of the videos that I've done, it was the one that I cut short because you could keep going. It was quite a long demo, and I think I already had an hour or something like that. I didn't want to go too far into it, and I think the demo for it is still available if you want to check it out yourselves. Repose, the complete opposite. This was a very short demo. So the idea of Repose, it is monochrome. Almost like the Apple II video games. And the idea of Repose is it's kind of a grid-based thing. You're just using WASD, or the arrow keys, to move around. You don't even really need the mouse. In fact, I don't think it has any mouse control whatsoever. And the idea with Repose is it's got a little bit of like Lethal Company kind of thing going to it, in that you're thrust into this maze area and you're collecting oxygen tanks from other people who have gone in to collect oxygen tanks effectively. And at the same time, there's, you know, weird SCP shit going on down there. What is different about it, and it's kind of more of an appeal to me, is that the area is like handcrafted, like bespoke, custom. It's not procedural generation or anything like that. It's not randomized, anything like that. Like, you're going to encounter the same thing every time. So it is like a scripted narrative instead. But yeah, I quite liked it. Demo is very short, is the only thing, which leads me to think that the game itself is probably very short too. But yeah, I liked it. And then Moroi, that video has only just gone up. Only went up like a couple of hours ago, so hopefully some people have seen it. I don't know. Anyway, Moroi is a top-down action-adventure RPG kind of thing. RPG maybe not, top-down action-adventure instead. So it's twin-stick controls, you've melee, you've gunplay, and what have you. But it's the stuff outside of the combat that's way more interesting. It is both very fucked up and very funny at the same time. It's got this real brutal humor to it that I thought was amazing. Like, there's a couple of times in the video where I am laughing out loud at the stuff that's happening. Like, it's fucked up, but it's also very, very funny. So yeah, I do encourage you to check out Moroi as well, and I do think its demo is still available after Next Fest. So all 5 of those games, don't know when they're releasing. They could be next year, could be later this year, could be next month, could be anything. They're all TBA right now, so they don't have any official release dates. Anyway, outside of the channel stuff, I have been playing still more Pillars of Eternity. I'm into Act 3 now. I think the game has 4 acts. And I think it's at this point it's suggested you check out the DLC, which is the White March. I'm still not really feeling it, to be honest. I'm mostly pushing through it now because Pillars of Eternity 2, Dreadfire, whatever it's called, uses the same character. You know, it's like a save import kind of thing as well. So I kind of want to do that. So I'm mostly pushing through to just play Pillars 2 at this point. But yeah, I'm still not really a fan of real time with pause. You know, I really do prefer turn-based, and believe Dreadfire is turn-based, or at the very least has the option to be turn-based. So I'm mostly just pushing through to get that now. But yeah, I do like the story, and I do like some elements of the combat, but I do feel that it is... Like, I do feel that it overly caters to... And I get why, because, like, it was a Kickstarter game, but it kind of overly caters to fans of, like, the really old CRPGs, like the Baldur's Gate ones, Icewind Dale, that kind of thing. And, like, I like those games, but... I really prefer the modernization that's happened in the genre since then as well, and I do feel that it is a real throwback to those games, and that's good for the people who backed it, and you know, it was a big Kickstarter success because of that. But yeah, I really wish it was turn-based. That's all, because I don't feel like I understand what's going on in combat. I really am just getting through the skin of my teeth, and I think I know how my character works, but I really don't know how the other characters work at all. I'm just hoping that their AI is set up correctly at this point. So I would much rather have it turn-based, because then I could actually get a feel for the other characters and how they work and understand the mechanics of the underlying game system. I think with Baldur's Gate I was fine with it because I understood how D&D worked anyway. So I didn't feel like I needed to dive into the mechanics, but this is a different game system and I don't really get it. Like, I'm probably going to have to play the game again, and I'm not sure I really want to. Anyway, that's what I've been doing off stream. The plan for stream next week, again, I'm still trying to get back into Hollow Body, and I'm still trying to get back into, you know, actual live streams again. Just has been things going on in the personal life, private life that have been stopping that. And it doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon either, but yeah, that is my plan. Hopefully. Anyway, at some point you'll see me again on the channel, and that will potentially just be next week's weekly news recap, but hopefully it'll be an actual game live stream at some point. Anyway, that's me done for today though. Thanks for keeping me company. Those 5 games, as I was talking about, from the Steam Next Fest, so Twisted Tower, Is the Sea Taken, Roots Devour, Repose, and Moroi. Check out those videos, you know, leave some comments, do me a solid. Appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and talk to you at some point. I don't know. Bye.